All right, let's get right into it. There's this massive new chip deal coming out of China, and man, on the surface, it really looks like a huge turning point in the tech war. But what's really going on behind the headlines? Well, that's what we're here to break down.
So it all kicks off with this number, $5.7 billion. That's supposedly the price tag for just 1 year's worth of AI chips that ByteDance, the folks behind TikTok, is buying from Huawei. This isn't just a big order. It's being sold as this massive landmark deal.
And of course, this is the official story you're hearing straight from Chinese state media. They're painting this as this incredible victory, a moment where China finally, cuts the cord and breaks free from its reliance on American tech.
So yeah, the official story? It's pretty compelling. You've got China's biggest AI players, like ByteDance and Alibaba, placing these monster orders for Huawei's new Ascend 950 PR chip. Huawei's even out there claiming their chip is almost 3 times more powerful than a similar one from NVIDIA. The conclusion they want you to draw is pretty simple. China's semiconductor industry has finally arrived. But, and this is a big but, this is where we really need to hit the brakes. Because when you start to dig into the details, that whole triumphant story, it just kind of starts to unravel. So is this really the whole picture?
No way. Not even close. The reality is just completely different from the official line. This isn't about ByteDance making some free market choice because Huawei's tech is just so superior. Nope. This is about a captive market. It's about having no other real options. And ultimately, it's about a government directive dressed up to look like a business deal.
So what do we even mean by a captive market? Well, think of it like this. It's when you're basically forced to buy from one company. Not because you love their product, but because things like US sanctions and, government pressure have literally wiped all the other options off the menu.
Okay, so let's follow the evidence. Let's follow the numbers, because they tell the real story here. And trust me, it's a very different story from the one we've been told.
This timeline here, it lays it all out, step by step. You see, this wasn't some sudden decision. It was a slow, deliberate squeeze. It starts back in 2022 with the US restricting chip exports. Fast forward to 2025, and the top-of-the-line NVIDIA chips, they've pretty much dried up in China. So by the time ByteDance needs to place a massive order in 2026, their best option, the one they really want, is just gone. And that leaves Huawei as, well, the only game in town.
And this is where the whole official narrative just completely falls apart. Huawei's bragging that its chip is better than NVIDIA's H20. But the H20 is a chip that NVIDIA purposefully weakened just so it could be legally sold to China under US export rules. The real king of the hill, the global state-of-the-art chip, is NVIDIA's Blackwell B200. And it's not just a little better, it's around 30 times faster. 30!
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. A 30 times performance gap. That's not a gap, that's a chasm. It means that Chinese AI labs are actually falling further behind their global competitors, not catching up. It's like they're running a completely different race on a totally separate track. And a huge reason for that performance chasm comes down to the manufacturing. See, Huawei's chips are made by a company called SMIC, and they're stuck using older technology. Why? Because they're blocked from using the world's best chip maker, TSMC, the same one NVIDIA uses. So what you get is lower quality, fewer usable chips per wafer, and at the end of the day, just slower, less powerful chips, period.
All right, now let's put that $5.7 billion number in perspective. Sounds like a ton of money, right? And it is. But then you compare it to Meta, Facebook, which is spending $65 billion on its AI infrastructure in just 1 year. Suddenly, ByteDance's entire massive order looks like a drop in the bucket. The scale, it's not even in the same league. And hey, if you need any more proof that Chinese companies are absolutely desperate for better hardware, just look at this. US authorities recently busted a smuggling ring that was sneaking $160 million worth of high-end NVIDIA chips into China. I mean, come on. You don't risk going to federal prison to smuggle something if there's a perfectly good alternative you can buy at home. This tells you everything you need to know about the real demand. So the big question is, if the reality is this massive widening hardware gap, why is everyone, from Beijing to ByteDance, acting like this is some huge domestic victory? Well, to understand that, you got to look at the incentives.
It's one of those weird situations where the story, even if it's not the full truth, kind of works for everybody involved. For Beijing, it's a chance to project strength and say, see, our self-sufficiency plan is working. For Chinese tech companies like ByteDance, it's about showing their team players staying on the government's good side. And you know what's really wild? It even helps NVIDIA.
Because every year China is stuck using inferior hardware, NVIDIA's global dominance just gets stronger and stronger.
And we need to be clear, this isn't just about who has the best chip today. This growing gap in computing power, it has some really profound long-term consequences for the future of AI itself. Think about it. Without access to the best hardware, China's AI models are just going to hit a ceiling. It's going to get way more expensive and way harder for them to train the next generation of cutting-edge AI. And what happens then? Well, you'll probably see top AI researchers start to leave, heading for places like Singapore or the UAE where they can get their hands on the best tools. And it's going to force people in the West to really rethink this whole narrative about an imminent China AI threat.
Really, it all boils down to this one simple fact. The hardware choke point is real and consequential. The whole strategy of using export controls to limit access to these chips, it's not just a theory anymore, it's having a real, measurable, and pretty significant impact.
Okay, so we've unpacked a ton here. Let's boil it all down to the key takeaways. What does all of this actually mean for you?
All right, so if you're an investor, it's probably time to seriously reevaluate any idea that's built on China achieving AI parity anytime soon. If you're a builder, a developer, get ready for a world with two separate AI ecosystems running on totally different hardware. And for anyone watching policy, the writing's on the wall, the US export controls are working, and that makes whatever decisions come next absolutely critical.
And so that leaves us with this final, really important question to chew on. If modern AI is built foundationally on raw computing power, what does it mean for the future of global competition if one of the world's biggest players has a permanent structural disadvantage in getting that power? That's the big question here, something to really think about.